The ghost signal. Kalara pressed her four-fingered hand against the cold metal console and sighed. Another 12-hour shift at Outpost Meridian stretched ahead of her like an endless void. The monitoring station floated at the edge of civilized space, where the star maps ended and the Forbidden Zone began. Nothing ever happened here. That was the point. The Xylothian communications officer was young by her species standards, barely 70 cycles old. Her silver skin reflected the blue glow of the sensor screens that surrounded her cramped station. She had volunteered for this assignment hoping for adventure, hoping to discover something important. Instead, she spent her days watching empty space and listening to the hum of outdated equipment. The Forbidden Zone earned its name 3 centuries ago. Ships that ventured too deep into that region simply vanished. No distress calls. No debris fields. Just silence. The Galactic Council eventually declared the entire sector off-limits and stationed monitoring posts along its border. Outpost Meridian was one of 12 such stations, each staffed by small crews whose main job was to make sure nothing came out of the darkness. Kalara adjusted her headset and ran another routine scan. Her 3 eyes tracked across multiple displays showing radiation levels, gravitational anomalies, and electromagnetic signatures. Everything read normal. Everything always read normal. She reached for her thermal beverage and took a long drink, savoring the bitter taste that helped her stay alert. The console beeped. Kalara almost ignored it. False readings happened constantly out here. Cosmic dust, solar flares, equipment glitches. She had learned to recognize the difference between real threats and sensor ghosts during her first week on the station. But something about this particular reading made her pause. The signature was moving. Not drifting like debris. Moving with purpose and direction. She set down her beverage and leaned closer to the screen. Her primary eye focused on the data while her secondary eyes scanned the surrounding information. The object was approximately 2,000 kilometers away and approaching at sublight speed. The computer was attempting to identify the vessel type by comparing its energy signature against the database of every known ship design in the galaxy. The identification program ran for 30 seconds. Then 40. Then a full minute. Finally, text appeared on her screen, unknown configuration. Possible match, Terran design. Confidence, 87%. Kalara felt her blood temperature drop. Terran meant human. But humans were extinct. Everyone knew this. Every child in every school across every civilized world learned about the Great Silence when humanity disappeared without explanation 300 years ago. She ran the identification sequence again, certain the computer had made an error. The result came back identical. Her hands trembled slightly as she activated the long-range visual sensors and pointed them toward the approaching object. The image that appeared on her screen made her breathing stop. The ship was unlike anything she had seen in active service. The hull was smooth and dark, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. The design was sleek and predatory, with lines that suggested both grace and lethal capability. But what caught her attention were the markings along the side. Even after 3 centuries, even worn and faded, she recognized the symbols from history files. Letters from the human alphabet spelling out words in their ancient language. "Commander Vokath," Kalara called out, trying to keep her voice steady. "I need you to see something." The station commander was a massive Kralthian male with thick armor plating across his back and shoulders. He had served in the Galactic Defense Fleet for 200 cycles before taking this quiet posting to finish his career in peace. Vokath lumbered over to her station, his heavy footsteps echoing through the small command center. "What is it, Officer Kalara?" "Another debris field." "I do not think so, Commander." She transferred her display to his screen. "The computer identifies this as a human vessel." Vokath stared at the image for a long moment. Then he made a sound that might have been laughter. "Impossible. The computer is malfunctioning. Humans have been gone for 3 centuries. This must be an old derelict that drifted out of the Forbidden Zone. The ship is under power, Commander. It is approaching us at 0.3 light speed and showing no signs of deceleration." That got his attention. Vokatha's small eyes narrowed as he studied the data more carefully. Raise the station's defensive shields. Alert the other crew members to battle stations. And send an immediate transmission to Galactic Command informing them of the situation. Kalara's fingers flew across her console, executing each command with practiced efficiency. Around them, the station came to life. Warning lights activated. Blast doors sealed. The soft hum of the shield generators rose to a higher pitch as they powered up to maximum strength. "Commander," she said quietly. "Should I attempt to hail the vessel?" Vokath considered this. If the ship was hostile, communication might provoke an attack. If it was friendly, silence might be interpreted as aggression. Either way, they needed information. Open a channel on all standard frequencies. Let us see if anyone is actually aboard that ship. Kalara activated the communications array and spoke into her headset. "Unknown vessel, this is Outpost Meridian of the Galactic Council. You are approaching restricted space. Please identify yourself and state your intentions." Static filled the channel. The kind of empty hiss that came from transmission through the void. Kalara waited, counting her heartbeats. 5 seconds. 10. 15. Then a voice answered. "Outpost Meridian, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the Terran vessel Phoenix Rising. We receive your transmission and appreciate your caution." The voice was female, calm, and spoke perfect galactic standard without any accent or translation lag. "We are requesting permission to dock. We carry information of critical importance to the survival of all civilized species." The command center fell absolutely silent. Every crew member who could hear the transmission stopped what they were doing and turned toward the communication station. Kalara looked at Commander Vokath and saw her own shock reflected in his expression. A human. A living human speaking to them as if the past 3 centuries had never happened. Vokath recovered first. He took the headset from Kalara and spoke directly into the channel. "Captain Chen, this is Commander Vokath. Forgive my skepticism, but your species has been classified as extinct for over 300 years. We will require verification of your identity before we can proceed with any docking procedures." "Understood, Commander. I anticipated your concerns." There was a brief pause. "Transmitting visual identification now along with our ship's authentication codes. I think you will find everything in order." Kalara's screen split into 2 images. On one side was a close-up scan of the Phoenix Rising showing serial numbers and construction markers that matched human manufacturing standards from the pre-silence era. On the other side was a face. It was a human face. Kalara had seen images in historical archives, of course, but those were always old and static. This was different. This was real. Captain Sarah Chen appeared to be middle-aged by human standards. Her skin was darker than most humans in the old records, with warm brown tones. Her hair was black and pulled back in a practical style. But it was her eyes that captured Kalara's attention. They were deep brown and carried a weight that suggested someone who had seen terrible things and survived them. "My name is Sarah Chen," the human said, looking directly into the camera as if she could see them through the transmission. "I was born in a place called Singapore on Earth. I am a captain in the Terran Dimensional Fleet. My crew and I have traveled a very long way to deliver a warning that cannot wait." Commander Vokath exchanged glances with his senior staff. Kalara could see the debate playing out silently among them. This situation was unprecedented. The procedures manual had no section on what to do when an extinct species suddenly showed up at your door claiming to have urgent news. "Captain Chen," Vokath said carefully, "you will forgive us if we proceed with extreme caution. Your arrival raises many questions. Not least of which is where your people have been for the past 300 years. I will answer all your questions, Commander. But time is not on our side. There is a threat approaching this galaxy. A threat that destroyed most of human civilization once before. We barely escaped with our lives. Now that same threat is coming for everyone else, and you have no idea how to fight it. Kalara felt a chill run through her body despite the warm temperature in the command center. The way Chen spoke carried absolute conviction. Whatever this threat was, the human believed in it completely. Vokath made his decision. Very well, Captain Chen. You may dock at Port 7. You will come aboard alone and submit to a security scan. Any weapons or unknown technology will be confiscated. You will then be escorted to a secure meeting room where you can present your information. Is this acceptable? More than acceptable, Commander. Thank you for your trust. I will not waste it. The transmission ended. The command center erupted in urgent conversation as crew members rushed to prepare for the arrival. Kalara remained at her station, staring at the frozen image of Captain Chen on her screen. 300 years ago, humans had been common throughout this region of space. They had colonies on a dozen worlds. Their ships traveled every major trade route. They were known as a curious species, always exploring, always asking questions, always pushing boundaries. Then one day, every human everywhere simply vanished. Their cities stood empty. Their ships drifted silent in space. Not a single human remained anywhere in the known galaxy. The disappearance sparked hundreds of theories. Some species claimed humans had ascended to a higher plane of existence. Others believed they had been abducted by unknown forces. A few suggested they had destroyed themselves in some catastrophic war. The Galactic Council investigated for decades but found no answers. Eventually, humanity was officially declared extinct, and their abandoned worlds were sealed as historical sites. Now, impossibly, one of them had returned. Officer Kalara, Commander Vokath's voice interrupted her thoughts. You will accompany me to the docking bay. Your skill with languages and analysis may prove useful. Kalara stood immediately, feeling honored and terrified in equal measure. Yes, Commander. They made their way through the narrow corridors of Outpost Meridian. The station was not designed for comfort, just function. Metal walls and floors. Harsh lighting. The constant vibration of the life support systems. But it had always felt safe to Kalara. Now, walking toward the docking bay to meet an impossible visitor, she was not so certain anymore. The docking bay was the largest open space on the station. It could accommodate 3 small vessels at once, though it rarely hosted more than supply shuttles. Port 7's airlock showed green status, indicating a successful seal with the human ship. 6 security officers stood in formation, weapons ready but not raised. Behind them, medical staff waited with scanning equipment. Commander Vokath took his position at the front of the group. Kalara stood slightly behind him, a data pad ready to record every detail of the encounter. The airlock door opened with a hiss of equalizing pressure. Captain Sarah Chen stepped through. She was shorter than Kalara expected, barely reaching the Xylothian officer's shoulder. Humans were not a physically imposing species. They lacked natural weapons or armor. Their senses were limited compared to most spacefaring races. But Chen carried herself with quiet confidence that filled the entire bay. She wore a uniform of dark gray with subtle patterns woven into the fabric. No visible weapons. No obvious technology except for a small device on her wrist that might have been a communicator. Her hands were empty and held at her sides in a non-threatening position. Commander Vokath, she said, nodding respectfully. Thank you for allowing me to come aboard. Captain Chen. Vokath returned the nod. You will submit to a security scan before we proceed. Of course. The medical team moved forward with their equipment. They ran scanners over Chen's body, checking for weapons, explosives, biological threats, and unknown technology. The scans took several minutes. Kalara watched the human's face during the process. Chen showed no sign of discomfort or impatience. She simply waited, calm and still. She is clean, Commander, the lead medical officer reported. No weapons detected. No dangerous pathogens. The device on her wrist appears to be a standard communicator and nothing more. Vokath nodded. Very well. Captain Chen, if you will follow me, we have prepared a meeting room where we can speak privately." They walked through the station in silence. Crew members pressed themselves against the walls to let them pass, staring openly at the human. Chen acknowledged each of them with small nods but said nothing. Kalara studied her carefully, noting details that might be important later. The human moved with the easy grace of someone comfortable in artificial gravity. Her breathing was steady and controlled. Her eyes constantly scanned her surroundings, taking in information without appearing aggressive or suspicious. The meeting room was small and sparse. A round table with chairs arranged around it. A view screen on one wall. Nothing else. Vokath gestured for Chen to sit, then took his own seat across from her. Kalara positioned herself to the side where she could observe both of them clearly. "Now then, Captain Chen," Vokath began. "I believe you have some explaining to do. Where have your people been for the past 300 years? Chen leaned forward slightly, her expression serious. "Commander, what I am about to tell you will sound impossible. I ask only that you listen to everything before making judgments." "I am listening." 312 years ago, humanity detected something approaching from deep space. We called them the Devourers. They are not a natural species. They are machine intelligence, created by an ancient civilization that died out millions of years ago. The Devourers were programmed with a single purpose: harvest biological matter and convert it into resources for their creators. But their creators are long dead, and the machines continue following their programming without end or mercy. Kalara felt her skin prickle. She had heard stories of machine races before, but nothing like this. Chen continued. The Devourers move through the galaxy in waves, consuming everything in their path. They strip planets down to bedrock. They harvest every living thing they encounter. Then they move on to the next system, the next sector, the next galaxy. They have been doing this for millions of years. Why did they target humanity specifically? Vokath asked. They did not. We were simply in their path. Human scientists detected their approach 70 years before they arrived. We tried everything. We built weapons. We formed alliances. We evacuated as many worlds as we could. Nothing worked. The Devourers were too many, too powerful, too relentless. Chen's expression grew distant, as if she was remembering something painful. We lost Earth first. Then Mars. Then every colony world in our home system. Billions died in a matter of months. The surviving human fleet had nowhere to run. The Devourers were faster than our ships. They could track us anywhere in normal space. So what did you do? Kalara asked quietly. Chen looked at her with those deep brown eyes. We did something desperate. Something that should not have been possible. Human scientists had been researching dimensional theory for decades. They believed it might be possible to create a fold in space-time, a pocket dimension where different physical laws applied. It was all theoretical. Untested. Dangerous beyond measure. You escaped into another dimension, Vokath said slowly. We had no choice. Stay and die, or jump into the unknown and possibly die. At least the second option gave us a chance. Chen paused. 12 million humans made the jump. We took our last surviving ships, all our remaining technology, everything we could carry. And we folded ourselves out of normal space. The room fell silent. Kalara tried to imagine what that must have been like. An entire species fleeing their galaxy, leaving behind everything they had built, everyone they had lost. The desperation. The fear. The hope that somehow, impossibly, they might survive. That was 312 years ago in this dimension, Chen said. In the fold space where we took shelter, time moves differently. What was 300 years for you was over 1,000 years for us. Kalara's three eyes widened. 8,000 years. 1,247 years to be exact. We did not waste that time, officer. We rebuilt our civilization. We advanced our technology. We trained our people. And we prepared for the day when we would have to face the Devourers again. Vokath leaned back in his chair, processing this information. Why return now? If you were safe in your fold space, why come back? Because the Devourers are coming here, Commander. They finished consuming our home galaxy and now they are moving toward this one. They will arrive in approximately 60 days. And when they do, every species in the Galactic Council will face the same extinction we barely escaped. The lights in the meeting room flickered. Alarms began blaring throughout the station. Kalara's communicator crackled to life. Commander, came an urgent voice. Multiple contacts appearing on long-range sensors. Unknown ship types, dozens of them, approaching at high speed. Chen stood immediately. That will be the scouts. The Devourers send advanced units ahead of their main fleet. She looked at Vokath with an expression that mixed urgency and regret. Commander, I am afraid our time for conversation has just run out. We need to get your people to safety right now. Vokath was already moving toward the door. All hands, battle stations. Evacuate non-essential personnel. Officer Kalara, get Captain Chen back to her ship. But Chen shook her head. With respect, Commander, my ship is the safest place on this station right now. The Phoenix Rising has weapons and defensive systems your people cannot match. If you want to survive the next 20 minutes, I suggest you let me help. Kalara and Vokath exchanged one last look. Then the commander nodded. Show us what humans learned in 1,000 years, Captain Chen. They ran toward the docking bay as the station shook around them. On every screen they passed, Kalara could see the approaching contacts. Dozens of vessels unlike anything in the galactic database. Each one radiating hostile intent. The Devourers had arrived. And humanity, it seemed, had returned just in time. The truth unveiled. The docking bay erupted into chaos as crew members scrambled to their emergency positions. Kalara felt the deck vibrate beneath her feet as the station's defensive systems powered up. Red alert lights bathed everything in an ominous glow. Through the bay's observation windows, she could see distant flashes as the approaching hostile ships entered weapons range. Captain Sarah Chen moved with purpose toward the airlock connecting to her ship. She tapped the device on her wrist and spoke in the human language, quick and efficient. Kalara's translator struggled to keep up, catching only fragments. Phoenix, this is Chen. Emergency protocols. Prepare defensive grid Alpha. Authorization Chen 77 Delta. Captain. Commander Vokath called out, his massive form catching up to them. What exactly are we facing? Chen paused at the airlock entrance and turned to face them. Her expression was grim but controlled. The Devourers send scout units ahead of their main fleet to assess threats and gather intelligence. Each scout is approximately 200 meters long, heavily armed, and completely autonomous. They do not negotiate. They do not retreat. They analyze, attack, and transmit their findings back to the main fleet before they are destroyed. Before they are destroyed? Kalara asked. You sound certain we can defeat them. I am certain of nothing, officer. But humanity has been preparing for this confrontation for over 1,000 years. We have weapons and strategies specifically designed to fight these machines. Your station, however, was built for monitoring and basic defense. Against Devourer scouts, it will not last more than 15 minutes. Vokatha's armor plates bristled with tension. Then what do you suggest? Evacuate everyone to the Phoenix Rising. My ship can protect far more lives than this station. Once everyone is aboard, we engage the scouts and destroy them before they can transmit detailed information about your defensive capabilities. You want us to abandon our post? Vokatha's voice carried an edge of pride and duty. This station has stood watch for 75 years. Chen met his gaze steadily. Commander, I understand the difficulty of this decision. But in approximately 12 minutes, those scouts will reduce this station to debris. You can stay here and die defending metal and circuits, or you can trust me and live to defend the people who are counting on you. The choice is yours. Kalara watched Vokatha's face as he wrestled with the decision. She could see the conflict there. The commander was a career military officer. Abandoning his post went against every instinct he possessed. But he was also intelligent enough to recognize when tradition had to yield to survival. All personnel, Vokath spoke into his communicator. This is Commander Vokath. Immediate evacuation order. All crew members report to Docking Bay 7. This is not a drill. We are boarding the Terran vessel. Move quickly and bring only essential equipment. The corridors outside the bay filled with running footsteps. Crew members appeared carrying emergency supply cases and personal items. Their faces showed fear and confusion, but they followed orders with disciplined efficiency. The outpost Meridian had 42 personnel in total. Getting them all aboard the human ship would take precious minutes they might not have. Phoenix, open all available airlocks, Chen commanded. Prepare to receive 42 individuals, various species. Medical team on standby. A voice responded from her wrist device, male and calm. Acknowledged, Captain. Airlocks 2 through 5 opening now. Medical standing by. Defensive systems at 97% charge. The airlock doors opened simultaneously, revealing passages that led into the human ship. Kalara stared in fascination. The interior of the Phoenix Rising was nothing like any vessel she had seen before. The walls appeared to be made of a material that shifted between solid metal and something almost organic. Soft blue lighting illuminated the corridors, and the air that flowed out carried a scent that reminded her of growing things, of life and renewal. The evacuation proceeded with remarkable speed. Crew members filed through the airlocks in organized groups. Chen stood at the main entrance, directing traffic with hand signals and brief instructions. She seemed to know instinctively how to position different species for optimal efficiency, accounting for their various physical needs and psychological comfort levels. Kalara helped an elderly Thrillian engineer through the airlock. The small, insectoid female was trembling with fear and clutching a data core to her thorax. It is going to be all right, Kalara said softly, though she was not entirely certain she believed her own words. The ghosts have returned, the engineer whispered. The old stories were true. Humans walk among us again. They are not ghosts. They are survivors. Just like we are trying to be. The station shuddered violently. Kalara grabbed a support railing to keep from falling. Through the observation windows, she saw the first Devourer scout ship come into clear view. It was exactly as Chen had described. 200 meters of dark, angular machinery that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The surface was covered with what looked like thousands of sensor arrays and weapon ports. As she watched, brilliant beams of red energy lanced out from the scout ship and struck the station's shields. The shields held. For now. All personnel aboard, someone shouted. Final headcount shows 42, all accounted for. Commander Vokath was the last to cross the threshold. He turned back for one final look at his station, his home for the past 15 years. Kalara saw the pain in his eyes. Then he straightened his shoulders and stepped into the Phoenix Rising. Seal all airlocks, Chen ordered. Detach from the station. Combat stations, full alert. Commence engagement sequence. The docking clamps released with a series of metallic clanks. Kalara felt the subtle shift as the human ship separated from Outpost Meridian and moved away with smooth acceleration that defied her understanding of physics. There was no sensation of thrust, no feeling of inertia. One moment they were docked, the next they were free in space. All evacuation personnel, please proceed to the designated safe zones on decks 3 and 4, a pleasant voice announced throughout the ship. Emergency support staff will assist you. Please remain calm and follow all instructions. Chen moved toward what Kalara assumed was the bridge. Commander Vokath, Officer Kalara, you are welcome to observe from the command center if you wish. I think you will want to see what happens next. They followed her through corridors that seemed to anticipate their movements. Doors opened before they reached them. The lighting adjusted to perfect levels for their various visual spectra. The ship felt alive in a way that made Kalara profoundly uncomfortable and deeply intrigued at the same time. The bridge of the Phoenix Rising was nothing like any military vessel Kalara had studied. Instead of individual consoles and stations, it was a circular room with a raised platform in the center. Holographic displays floated in the air, showing tactical information, ship status, and external views in stunning clarity. A dozen human crew members worked at stations around the perimeter, their movements precise and coordinated. "Captain on the bridge," someone announced. The crew acknowledged Chen's presence with brief nods but continued their work without breaking rhythm. Chen stepped onto the central platform. The holographic displays rearranged themselves around her, responding to her gestures and spoken commands. "Tactical, report." A young human male with pale skin and bright green eyes responded immediately. "3 Devourer scouts confirmed, Captain. They are maintaining formation and advancing on the station. Current distance, 42,000 kilometers and closing. Estimated time until they reach effective weapon range of the station, 7 minutes. Defense grid status. All systems operational. Dimensional shields at maximum. Primary weapons charged and ready. Secondary weapons standing by." Chen nodded and turned to look at Vokath and Kalara. "What you are about to witness may challenge your understanding of physics and warfare. I ask that you observe and hold your questions until the engagement is complete. We need to move quickly." "Understood," Vokath said quietly. Chen turned back to her tactical officer. "Initiate combat protocol, Shepard. Target the lead scout. Weapons free on my mark." The ship began to change. Kalara could feel it through the deck, a subtle vibration that resonated in her bones. The holographic displays showed the Phoenix Rising doing something impossible. The ship appeared to split into multiple overlapping images, each one slightly out of phase with the others. "Dimensional drive engaged," the tactical officer reported. "Phase shift holding stable. Weapon systems synchronized across all phase layers." "What is happening?" Kalara whispered. A female human standing nearby, older with gray hair and kind eyes, answered softly. "We exist in multiple dimensional states simultaneously. To normal sensors, we appear as one ship. In reality, we occupy 17 different phase positions. Makes us very difficult to target." The Devourer scouts seemed to notice the change. They altered their formation, spreading out into a wider pattern. Weapon ports along their hulls began to glow with building energy. "They are preparing to fire," the tactical officer said. "Target lock attempts detected. All failing to maintain coherence." Chen raised her hand. "Hold position. Let them commit." The scouts fired. Dozens of energy beams and projectile weapons erupted from their hulls, all converging on the position where the Phoenix Rising appeared to be. The weapons passed through empty space, hitting nothing. The human ship had not moved. It had simply allowed the attacks to pass through the spaces between its phase positions. "Now," Chen said calmly. "Mark." The Phoenix Rising fired back. But these were not weapons Kalara recognized. Instead of energy beams or missiles, the ship seemed to reach out with invisible hands and touch the lead scout ship. Where it touched, reality broke. The Devourer scout simply came apart, not exploding but rather dissolving into component molecules that scattered like dust in solar wind. The entire process took less than 3 seconds. "Lead scout destroyed," the tactical officer confirmed. "Remaining scouts adjusting tactics. They are attempting to retreat." "Do not let them," Chen said, her voice hard. "If even one escapes and reports what it has learned, the main fleet will arrive prepared for dimensional warfare. Pursue and eliminate." The Phoenix Rising moved. One moment it hung in space near the station, the next it was halfway across the battlefield, positioned between the retreating scouts and open space. Kalara had not felt any acceleration, had not seen the ship move on the displays. It had simply changed position instantaneously. How? She breathed. Dimensional jumping, the grey-haired human explained. We fold space rather than travel through it. Takes enormous energy, but it allows near-instantaneous repositioning. The second scout tried to fight. It unleashed everything in its arsenal, filling space with destructive energy. The Phoenix Rising phased through it all and responded with the same reality-dissolving weapon. The scout came apart like sand in a windstorm. The third scout did something unexpected. Instead of fighting or fleeing, it began transmitting on multiple frequencies simultaneously. Data streams poured out of the machine, desperate attempts to send information back to its fleet before death claimed it. It is broadcasting, the tactical officer warned. Attempting to jam, but it is using frequencies across the entire electromagnetic spectrum. Some data is getting through. Chen's expression tightened. Kill it. Now. The Phoenix Rising fired its main weapon. The third scout dissolved into nothing. But it had transmitted for nearly 10 seconds. 10 seconds of data about the human ship, about their capabilities, about their presence in this sector. The bridge fell silent except for the soft hum of systems. Damage report, Chen said quietly. No damage to the ship, Captain. All systems nominal. 0 casualties. What about the data transmission? How much did it send? The tactical officer worked his console for a moment before answering. Partial tactical assessment. Ship configuration. Approximate power readings. Nothing about our dimensional capabilities. The transmission was interrupted before it could send that information. But enough for the main fleet to know that a powerful unknown ship is operating in this sector. Chen nodded slowly. She turned to face Vokath and Kalara. Commander, that scout transmission just started a timer. The Devourer main fleet will receive that data within 48 hours. They will accelerate their approach to this sector. Instead of 60 days, you now have perhaps 30 days before they arrive in force. Vokath's expression was grim. How many ships are in their main fleet? When they attacked humanity 300 years ago, they fielded approximately 15,000 vessels. That was just one tendril of their force. The main swarm contains millions of ships, spread across multiple galaxies. The force that will arrive here will likely number between 50 and 100,000 vessels. The numbers were incomprehensible. Kalara felt her breathing become shallow. The entire Galactic Council fleet combined has fewer than 8,000 ships. We cannot possibly fight those numbers. Not alone, Chen agreed. Which is why humanity has returned. Our dimensional fleet currently numbers 12,000 ships. Combined with your forces, properly coordinated and using our technology, we have a fighting chance. A chance is not certainty, Vokath said. No, it is not. But it is better than the alternative. Commander, the Devourers do not negotiate. They do not take prisoners. They do not show mercy. Every biological civilization they encounter is harvested completely. Your people, my people, every species in this galaxy will face extinction if we do not stand together. Chen gestured and the holographic display changed, showing a star map of their galaxy. Red markers appeared throughout the outer rim. These are projected entry points where the Devourer fleet will emerge from deep space. They will arrive simultaneously across a front that spans thousands of light-years. Traditional defense strategies will not work. You cannot build walls high enough or concentrate your forces effectively enough to stop them using conventional tactics. Then what do we do? Kalara asked. We use the one advantage we have. Dimensional warfare allows us to be in multiple places simultaneously. Human ships can engage the enemy across the entire front at once. But we need intelligence. We need coordination. And we need every species in the Galactic Council to contribute ships, resources, and warriors to the defense. Vokath crossed his arms. The Council will never agree to unified command. Species politics and territorial disputes have prevented effective military cooperation for centuries. Then those species will die arguing about jurisdiction while their worlds burn, Chen said bluntly. Commander, I have spent 1,000 years preparing for this battle. I have watched my species transform itself from a scattered refugee fleet into a fighting force capable of challenging an extinction-level threat. We are ready to do our part. The question is whether the rest of the galaxy is ready to set aside old grievances and fight for survival. The outpost station appeared on the holographic display, still intact but clearly damaged from the scout attack. Vokath stared at it for a long moment. What are you asking of me specifically, Captain Chen? Come with me to Earth. Not the Earth you remember from history, but the new Earth humanity has built in fold space. Meet with our leaders. See our preparations. Then return to the Galactic Council and convince them that humanity has returned, that the Devourer threat is real, and that cooperation is the only path to survival. They will demand proof. I will provide everything you need. Sensor logs. Historical records. Devourer technology we have captured and studied. Officer Kalara's testimony as an independent witness. And if necessary, I will bring council representatives to Fold Space to see our fleet with their own eyes. Kalara spoke up. Captain Chen, you said humanity has been in Fold Space for over 1,000 years. Why did you not return sooner? Why wait until the Devourers were already approaching? It was the grey-haired human who answered. She stepped forward, and Kalara noticed the scientific insignia on her uniform. I am Dr. Elizabeth Martinez, Chief Scientist of the Dimensional Research Division. The answer to your question is complicated. When we first entered Fold Space, we had no control over our position relative to normal space. It took us nearly 400 years to develop the technology to open stable portals between dimensions. Another 300 years to develop ships that could operate effectively in both. And the final 300 years to build a fleet large enough to matter in a galactic-scale conflict. We came back as soon as we were able, Chen added. Not a moment sooner was possible. We knew the Devourers would continue their harvest. We knew other civilizations would fall while we prepared. That knowledge haunts every human who lived through those years. But returning too early, before we were ready, would have accomplished nothing except adding humanity to the list of extinct species. Vokath studied Chen's face carefully. Kalara knew the commander was using his decades of experience to assess whether this human could be trusted. Finally, he nodded. Very well, Captain Chen. I will accompany you to your hidden Earth. I will see your preparations with my own eyes. And if I am convinced that you speak the truth, I will do everything in my power to unite the Council for this fight. Chen extended her hand in the human gesture of agreement. Vokath grasped it with his massive clawed hand. Thank you, Commander. You are making the right choice. I hope so, Vokath said quietly. For all our sakes. The bridge doors opened and a young human officer entered quickly. Captain, we are receiving an emergency transmission from the Galactic Council. Multiple outposts along the rim are reporting scout ship sightings. The Devourers are probing defenses across 1,000 light-year front. Chen's expression hardened. They are moving faster than we anticipated. The attack may come in weeks rather than months. She turned to her crew. Set course for Fold Space Entry Point Gamma. Maximum speed. Commander Vokath, Officer Kalara, I suggest you prepare your crew for what you are about to see. The journey to Earth will take approximately 6 hours. When we arrive, nothing will be as you expect. As the Phoenix Rising turned away from the damaged outpost and accelerated toward unknown space, Kalara stood at the observation window and watched the stars begin to blur. She thought about the impossible day she had experienced. A routine shift transformed into first contact with an extinct species. An attack by machine intelligence from beyond the galaxy. And now a journey to a hidden human civilization that had survived and thrived in another dimension. The galaxy she knew had changed forever. The comfortable certainty of human extinction had been replaced by something far more complex and dangerous. An enemy was coming that could not be reasoned with or deterred. And humanity, the species everyone thought was gone, had returned as the galaxy's only hope for survival. Kalara looked at Captain Chen standing on the command platform, surrounded by holographic displays and attended by her efficient crew. The human seemed so small and fragile compared to the vast forces gathering against them. But there was steel in her spine and determination in her eyes. Perhaps, Kalara thought, perhaps that was exactly what humanity had always been. Small and fragile, but utterly unwilling to surrender. Survivors who turned every setback into preparation for the next challenge. The stars outside the window began to change color, shifting through a spectrum that should not exist. They were approaching the fold in space that would take them to Earth. Beginning dimensional transition, the navigator announced. All hands, prepare for phase shift. The phoenix rising pierced the barrier between dimensions, and reality itself bent around them. For a brief moment, Kalara saw everything and nothing simultaneously. Past and future overlapped with present. She saw Earth as it had been, blue and green and alive. She saw Earth as it became, consumed by machines and left as dead rock. And she saw Earth as it was now, rebuilt and hidden, waiting in fold space for the moment when humanity would return. Then the moment passed. The ship stabilized. And before them, hanging in a space that should not exist, was a sight that made Kalara's breath catch in her throat. Earth. Alive. Surrounded by hundreds of ships that gleamed like jewels in the strange light of fold space. Behind it, visible in the distance, were other worlds. Colonies. Stations. Shipyards building vessels on a scale that defied comprehension. Humanity had not just survived. They had built an empire in exile. An empire preparing for war. Welcome, Captain Chen said softly, to what we have been building for you. Welcome to hope. Commander Vokath stood beside Kalara, staring at the impossible sight before them. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a mixture of awe and relief. The galaxy may survive this after all. Kalara hoped he was right. Because in 30 days, perhaps less, the Devourers would arrive. And every living being in the galaxy would discover whether hope was enough to stand against extinction. The battle for survival was about to begin.